Hey, welcome, and we are so glad that you're here with us today. My name is Nick, and I'm one of the pastors at River Lake, and we believe church should be relevant, simple, and real. We hope to see you this weekend.
Amen. You can be seated. How's everybody doing? Good. Hey, welcome to third service today. We are wrapping up our series that we've been in, which feels like forever if you've been with us, entitled Choose. And today I want to walk through and I want to talk about the power of choices. Because let's be honest, there are some decisions that are bigger than others, right? I mean, if you go to McDonald's today afterward, which that's not a great choice to begin with, but if you do, and you're like, you get to choose between a Big Mac or a hamburger or cheeseburger, that's not a big deal. You can do that. But I remember one of the first choices that felt like a big choice to me. I was in college. I was young, and I thought, man, everybody had these kind of things. I'm gonna date myself a little bit. You guys remember the Sprint flip phones? You know what I'm talking about? Like you just kind of flip those up, and like, yeah, you get it. If you're old, you get it. Like, so I remember like I wanted one of those, and so I thought, man, I'm gonna get one of those. I wanted it, and then I got to the Sprint store, and they're like, it'll be a 2-year commitment. I'm like, oh, that feels big, and I thought that was a big commitment until I bought a house. Okay. If you bought a house, you know what I'm talking about. Like it's not only like a 30-year commitment, but when you get there, they give you a stack of papers this thick, and they're like, you just start signing, right? You don't even, like I wanted a stamp. It was ridiculous, okay? You're signing. Pretty sure I owe somebody a kidney. Not quite sure what I completely signed away, but it's nuts. That's a big commitment. But that commitment really doesn't do much compared to the commitment, the choice that I made the day that I said I do to my spouse. That was a big day, obviously, and it affects so many things. And the point is this, that there are some choices that are bigger than others. And my prayer is just very practically just let you know where we're going today. My hope is today that you would make a choice wherever you're at to be completely all in with God. Whatever that looks like, whatever that manifests as, that whatever God's calling you to do, and hopefully you've been following along with us in the devotion, been praying along, and maybe with the series or whatever. Hopefully it's something that God's calling you to do, because what we said was week 1, man, every single person in here, you have a choice. God gives you this beautiful thing called free will, that you can choose to either follow him or not. But the problem is this, just like we can choose to follow God and God gives us a choice, Satan also comes to us with a choice. And we talked about that. We said, listen, Satan comes to us and says, listen, you don't have to follow God. Here's a choice. And the problem with Satan's choice is this: if you choose this one little link, this one little moment, this one little weekend, or it's just a look, it's just a thought, it's just kind of a relationship, it's just a decision. Come on, Nick, what's the big deal? The problem is, and you know this explains where some of you are at, that the choices from Satan tend to come with a chain. And that one choice becomes a series of choices, becomes a series of thoughts, becomes a series of decisions, and we're just going to go ahead and put it on. All right, here we go. Yeah. We just get stuck. We get stuck in patterns. We get stuck in habits. We get chained to ideas. We get chained to mindsets about who we are and what we need in life and what's important and what's not. We get chained to all these different things because of the choices that we have made. And while that's so true and so important to understand, the whole point of this series and my hope today is that just like a choice got you into that chain, you can have and you can make a choice to get out. You can choose to walk away, to walk into something different. And so today, we're going to wrap it up. And again, this whole series, we've been sitting with this quote, and it's this right here, that many of us have chosen heaven over hell. Meaning, again, if you're a guest, if you're new here today, that you've made a decision. Listen, you're a Christian. You believe in Jesus. Jesus is not the issue. You believe in God. Yeah, like you're good. The problem is, and the tension for many of us, myself in many seasons in life, is not many of us have chosen heaven over earth. That while we've chosen heaven after life, we haven't chosen heaven in this life. And we're still holding on to things. We're still holding on to things that we wish we could control. And so today we're going to pick up a story. We're going to wrap up this whole series in one of my favorite stories. It's in 1 Kings 17 and 18. So if you got a Bible, you can turn there. If not, we'll put it up online. And here's the backdrop of it. I love the Old Testament. I love the story of the nation of Israel because I say it all the time. Their story is our story. And so their story actually starts in Egypt. And if you don't know the story of Moses and Exodus, we unpacked that last year. in a series about the goat. And the whole point was this, that the nation of Israel was in bondage. They were in slavery. They had physical, literal chains on them. And they were held, and God rescued them. God pulled them out of it. He saved them. And in the middle of doing that, he pulled them out of physical bondage and slavery. The problem is this, and some of you know this, that there's more ways to be in slavery than just physical. Sometimes there's emotional. Sometimes there's relational. Sometimes it's financial slavery. There's just so much debt. It's so much kind of like you can't ever get out of it or whatever. And so what God does is God takes them through this desert period, this 40 years. And what he's showing them is, listen, there's more to freedom than just, I believe in God. One day, someday, it'll all get better. I'm going to heaven. He leads them through this whole deal. And he teaches them two important things. Two things that I think the church gets intuitively for the most part, which is this. He is the God of their welfare. God, help me, bless me, protect me. And warfare. I have a big problem. God, go get him. He's the God of both of them. And they walk through this. And so what happens is in this 40 years, God provides. He's the God of their welfare. Every morning they wake up, there's manna on the ground. They're provided for physically. And he's the God of their warfare. They go into the nation of Israel. They fight the battle of Jericho and all of what I call the ites, the Amorites, the Jebusites, all the ites in there. And God is the God of the welfare and warfare. The problem is this. When they get to the land of Israel, there's another God that comes up. And it's a God they've not had to deal with yet. It's the God of their wealth. That up until this moment, they didn't have much. And it's easy to give God, come on, we just know this. It's easy to give God everything when you have nothing. You know, it's easy to be like, God, I'm all in. Like, what do you got? Nothing. You had to have it all, though. And God's like, okay, that's not really impressive. But the moment you get something, it's a whole different ballgame. And so the tension for Israel is this. God is the God of the welfare and warfare, but could he be trusted? Could he be trusted really to be the God of their wealth? Because in that area, there was a God called Baal or Baal, depending on how you want to pronounce it, and Asherah. One's male, one's female. They're both the God of prosperity, the God of rain. Because rain was prosperity back then. If you had the rains, you could do the crops. If you had the crops, you had the money. They didn't have a bank account like we did. They just had storehouses full of grain and all this stuff. They are the God of prosperity. And so what the nation of Israel did was this. They would lean into Yahweh for the welfare and warfare. But they would lean into Baal and Asherah for their wealth, for the rains to come. And that was problematic. In fact, they did this for many, many years, and we're going to pick up the story where God has finally had it with it. He does something so incredible. In fact, he does something so just ridiculous to kind of show he is God. And so we're going to pick it up. It's 1 Kings 17. Elisha, the prophet of God, comes to the king who represents the nation, and he makes this declaration. As the Lord, the God of Israel lives, whom I serve, he declares there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years except at my word. Here's what he's saying. It's done. You want to lean into Baal for your money? You want to lean into Asher for your prosperity? You think the government provides for you? You think your boss provides for you? You think your 401k in the stock market and all that? You think that's where you get your money from? He goes, cool. I'm about to show you exactly where it comes from. And so Elisha comes in. He goes, hey, king, just so you know, no rain, no dew. You won't even wake up to anything that's just it's going to be dry. And that's exactly what happens. For 3 years, nothing. For 3 years, there is this famine. There is this nothingness. And I put in here, here's what I want you to see. Many times God will mess with our wealth to reveal who or what we worship. Over and over and over again, if you look at the scriptures. We don't tend to see it as wealth because we look at bank accounts, but if you look at the Old Testament and the New Testament too, their wealth actually was things like storehouses. It was crops. It was the things that they produced. That was their wealth, and God continues to mess with that. Because anything that gets in the way between you and your relationship with God, he is a jealous God. He will come after that. And so the question I got for you today is this, as we kind of started out, where do you feel there's a famine in your life? What's dry? What feels a little bit off? Maybe it is your finances. Maybe it is like God's trying to get your attention. And let me be very clear, because it'd be wrong to take this way. Not all famines are from God. Sometimes, there are 3 reasons things happen, okay? This is free, okay? I didn't say this the first 2 services. This is all for you, okay? There's 3 reasons. 1, Satan. 2, God is sanctifying you. 3, you're stupid, okay? Those are the 3 reasons, all right? And when I say you, I mean me too, okay? I'm dumb a lot, all right? So again, not all famines are God, okay? Some of you are like, I don't know why I can't get ahead financially. Well, it's because you also can't stop using your credit card. You got to tie those together, okay? Like every now and then people are like, oh, Christmas caught up with me. It's the same time every year, okay? Save for it. So anyway, like it's crazy, okay? But God's walking through this. And for some of you, maybe there's a famine in your life, in your finances, maybe in Christmas, all of a sudden, it just elevates every year. There's a dryness in your relationships. There's a famine in your relationships. Maybe it's a spouse. Maybe it's friends. You're online and you see everybody going to parties and you wish you had more friends to go on parties. And there's nothing quote unquote wrong, but it's just, you're just lacking that closeness, that tightness. This is one of the reasons we do small groups, is because, man, I just think relationally we're designed to be together. But maybe you feel that. Maybe it's with your kids. Your kids have gone. And again, there's nothing wrong. You just kind of feel that gap. You feel that struggle a little bit. Maybe it's just with your job. I don't know what it is. The question is, where is there a famine? Because if there is a famine in some area, God may be using that, leveraging that to get your attention. Say, listen, I need you to pay attention. Past few weeks, just very transparently, I've walked through a famine, so to speak. And I was telling my accountability partner about this. Just in a closeness in my walk with God. Nothing wrong, just nothing right. And didn't hit me till last night that God was using that to kind of reveal something. I got to deal with something bad, but it's something I've ignored for a while. And so maybe it's your relationship with God that you just feel a famine. That you're here today and you're like, Nick, nothing's wrong. Actually, money's okay and job's okay and spouse is okay. I don't feel that closeness to God. Maybe God's using that lack of connection to reveal a lack of commitment towards him. And so the story goes on. If you read, it's powerful. God shuts up the heavens. Man, there's a famine. Nothing's happening. Everybody is struggling. The whole nation is struggling. And we're going to fast forward 3 years later. Elisha comes back and says, hey, here's how we're going to settle this. In 3 years, don't miss this, in 3 years, even though God declared, hey, I'm shutting up the heavens. Why? Because you will not worship God, you're worshiping Baal. In 3 years, nobody repents and commits to God. In 3 years, they're still struggling, going, I don't know, we'll see. So God finally, in his grace, I think, comes into play and goes, no, we're going to settle this once and for all. They're going to have this kind of duel on this place called Mount Carmel. Now, Mount Carmel is a beautiful place. I've been there. It is insane. And it is a mountain in the middle of one of the flattest lands that you can have. In fact, we've got a picture. I want to put it up here really quickly. This is what it looks like. And so you can see it for miles and miles and miles away. And the reason this is so important is because what God says is, Elisha, I want you to go. You're going to take 500 prophets of Baal. I'm going to take you as my prophet. We're going to put you on top of the mountain. And then he says, listen, I want the king to invite the whole nation to watch. This is the valley of Megiddo. Some of you may know it as Armageddon. This is considered one of the best, most perfect battlefields in all of the world. But today, it's a stage. Today, it's like a TV set. It's the place where God says, no, I'm going to put me against them on display. And we're going to find out really who is God. And visually, it is so engaging. And so this is what happens. Elisha comes to the king, says, hey, round up everybody, tell the whole nation to come. We're going to go up on Mount Carmel. We're going to have a duel in front of everybody so no one wonders who is God. Chapter 18 says, so Ahab sent word throughout all the Israel and assembled the prophets on Mount Carmel. That's where we're at. Verse 21, Elijah went before the people and said, I love this, how long will you waver between two opinions? That's the tension, right? So again, they're holding on to God for their welfare and warfare. They're holding on to this Baal, this Asherah for their wealth. And the visual is this that I want you to see. These two ladders illustrate probably the whole series that the nation of Israel kind of leaned in and said, listen, man, I'm gonna commit to God. God, Yahweh's God. But man, Baal's God too. I'm all in. God, you got my welfare, but when it comes to my wealth, I'm gonna lean into this. And he says, listen, you're going back and forth. On Sundays, you're all about God. On Mondays, you're all about your job. And he says, no, listen. Only one can be Lord. Only one is the true God. You're waffling back and forth. You're wavering depending on your circumstances, depending on what you need, depending on what you're going on. He says you're going back and forth between two opinions. You need to figure out which it is. And he goes on, the next verse, he says, if the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him. But the people said nothing. At the end of the day, he's saying, listen, here's the deal. He's not telling them how to believe. Why? Because God gives us free will. You get to choose. But he's saying, here's the deal. If God's really God, be all in. Figure that out. Climb up this ladder. If he's not, that's okay too. Be all in. Paul says this in the New Testament pretty similar. He says, listen, if there is no God, if Christ really isn't redeemed, we are the most of people to be all pitied. Why? Because we live a life of sacrifice. We live a life of hardship some days. It's like, listen, if this isn't fully true, then go ahead and abandon this. Get all in on this one. If this is all there is, if there is no afterlife, if there is no heaven, then quit pretending, quit playing around. But too often, I think this is just the image of so many Christians nowadays. Man, I'm all in on God on Sunday. Raise my hands. Man, whatever you need. Mondays, okay, I got to figure this out. I'm all in, and man, I'm going to say the right things. I'm going to use my voice to declare who God is. And on Monday, I'm going to use my voice to gossip and declare who I think should be on The Bachelorette next season. I don't know. Is that show even on this? Anyway, so it's crazy. And I love that. But here's the deal. I grew up in a church, and there was this statement that I heard, and maybe you've heard it before, is God is either Lord of all or not Lord at all. And I used to think that's not true. I used to really struggle with that, but I've realized what they're really saying is this, that there's a type of people that they think God is Lord of certain areas and not all areas. And so they're like, no, he's Lord. He's just not Lord of all. But the bottom line is he's not really Lord at all. Why? Because the only areas that he's Lord is areas that they don't care about. And the only areas that they've given him lordship over is the areas that they don't care about. And the moment they do care about him, they're going to take those back too. He's either Lord of everything or he's Lord of nothing, which brings to the second question. The first one was, where's the famine in your life potential? The second is this: is God the God of everything? Or is he just the God of some things? Are you wavering between two opinions? What does your relationship say? What does your bank account say? What does your time say? What does your heart and your mind and your thought process say? The story goes on. I love this. They sit back, and in verse 33, he talks about it. And so if you read it, we're going to skip ahead. It says the prophets of Baal were there, and they sacrificed their bull, and they're praying that the fire from heaven would come down and kind of show that Baal's God, and nothing happens. And if you read it, you should go back and read it. It's 1 Kings 18. I love it because Elisha does something I would do. Elisha and I are kind of kindred spirits. He mocks them, which is like, that's my spirit right there, okay? Like I have a quick tongue. And so if you read it, it's so funny. Elisha's like, they're like singing and dancing around the altar, and they start to cut themselves. And Elisha's like, hey, no, maybe he's asleep. You should like sing louder. No, cut yourself more. At one point, there's a verse, no joke. It says, maybe he's going to the bathroom. That's a great line right there. Maybe your God's too busy. Maybe he's messed up. Like Elijah is mocking them over and over and over again. And for about 8 hours, nothing happens. For 8 hours, you've just got 500 prophets walking around, singing their little deal, dancing their little deal, cutting themselves, doing something. Nothing is happening. Elisha finally goes, okay, cool, here's the deal. You've had 8 hours, now give me 8 minutes. I'm about to show you on display who is the real God. But how he does it is so important. And what he does is so important. It's what I want you to see today. He says this, verse 33, he says he arranged the wood, cut the bull into pieces. Now, let me just quickly. In a famine, what do you not have a lot of? Steak. You know what I'm saying? Like, seriously, if you're in a famine, nobody's walking around going, those ribs, they were really filling last night. Like, you don't do that. No, so what does Elijah do? He's like, yeah, I want a bull. We don't have a lot of bulls. I don't care. He chooses the very thing that they're lacking to be the very thing that he sacrifices. And then he goes on. It says, then he said to them, fill 4 large jars with water. What's the other thing that you lack in a famine? Water. That's like the epitome. That's the very thing you don't have. And again, I think that the description is so powerful. It doesn't say 4 jars of water. It doesn't like, hey, let's get a couple of bottles and kind of. It's like, no. I want 4 large jars of the very thing that they have very little of. And I want you to dump them all over the sacrifice. And I just got to believe that there was a whole bunch of people watching going, what a waste. Are you kidding me? What a waste. Do you know how many people that bull sacrifice could feed? You're just gonna burn it up? Do you know how many crops? Do you know how many people could use that water? What a waste. It reminds me of the story in the New Testament with the woman who sacrificed the perfume on Jesus' feet. Same thing. Do you know how many people that would feed? What a waste. But what I want you to see is that it's not waste if it's worship. See, it's only waste if it's not true. And the bottom line is this. He says it this way. Verse 34, it goes on. It says, he looks at him and says, after that, he says, do it again. Get 4 large jars of water and dump it on them again. Wait a minute, we just did that. It's already wet. Yeah, no, do it again. You want us to keep wasting more water? Yes, do it again. And then on top of that, he says, do it a 3rd time. Let's just go excessive. 12 different jars that would have been hard to get there. There's no water on top of the mountain. I've been there. So again, it had to take a lot of work. It had to take a lot of effort. It had to take a lot of time. They're going and getting this all to just be dumped out. And again, I'm telling you, everybody had to be watching this going, what a waste of resources. And I think sometimes that's what happens in the church. God calls us to give sacrificially, financially, and we go, do you know how hard I worked for that? Do you know how little I have? Do you know what you're asking of me? I mean, listen, I got a whole bunch of extra of this over here. God, you can have this. And do not miss the fact that the sacrifice was an actual sacrifice. God chose the very thing that they lacked to be the very thing that they sacrificed. He could have chosen anything. Do it again. Worship. Worship almost always feels like waste to outsiders. Let me try to illustrate this. I'm not going to ask if you're a golfer, but I like to golf, okay? I'm terrible at it. I'm terrible at it, okay, by the way. So, but golf is one of those things, like if you don't golf, I have friends of mine, I don't because I'm too cheap, but I have friends of mine, they will spend like $600 on a driver to still hit it into the woods. It's awesome, by the way. They're like, oh, I got a brand new driver. I'm like, it's still going straight right, okay? Yeah, that's not going to fix it. Like, I got a $3 ball that's going straight out there. Like, yeah, that's great, man. But they will spend $600 on a driver. They'll spend $1,100 on irons. And here's the deal. If you don't golf, it's easy to look at that and go, what a waste. But it's not to the person who worships golf. And listen, I don't think you should worship golf, okay? That's not my point. And again, before you get too judgy, I'll tell you right now, I see so many people that they will judge how much money is spent on golf. Like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you waste that much money. But then they will spend it on what they worship. And you know what I find so many people worship, and maybe not you, and I hope not you? We worship food. And we sacrifice our finances, our health, our energy to the altar of McDonald's and Wendy's and Dairy Queen and all Taco Bell, and don't go to Taco Bell. But anyway, like all these things. And we would sit back and go, well, you got to eat. And it's not wasteful. Are you kidding me? No, Nick, I really enjoy this. Yeah, it's never wasteful if you worship. The problem is in our world, we tend to worship the wrong things. There's nothing wrong with golf. I love playing golf. There's nothing wrong with can't even get that out of my percent. There's not too much wrong with McDonald's, okay? Like, I get it. But everything feels like waste if you don't understand worship. And in this moment, Elijah's doing something. He's worshiping the one true God. And when you are all in on the one true God, it's never a waste. It's always worship. And so it says this, verse 36, at the time of sacrifice. Elisha owns it. It's a sacrifice. He's not looking at this going, oh, no, it's not a big deal. No, he understands, hey, this is a sacrifice. It's a big deal. Like we just dumped 12 big, huge jars of water. We took a bull that they didn't have a lot of extra. It's a sacrifice. He goes, I love this. The prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed. At some point, the talking had to be done. At some point, somebody had to step forward and pray. And that's really what today's about. Just in a few moments, I'm going to invite you to step forward and pray. I'm going to invite you to take a step of faith towards God, and whatever that looks like, I'm going to invite you to do that, to step forward and pray. And you don't have to, but you get to choose to if you want to. And too often, we sit back and we talk, but we don't ever do this. I love that imagery because what happens afterward, verse 38, I love this. It says this, then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the soil. And then my favorite part, and also, think about the imagery, licked up the water in the trenches. God's writing this and saying, none of all of that worship went to waste. None of that water went to waste. I got it all. I got it all. They're sitting back going, there's so much water and you waste it. He's like, no, I got it all. God's going, I got it all. Because he gets it all. When we give it to God, he gets it all. And it says in the next few verses that the nation of Israel, the people that were in the TV show, that were in that kind of flat air that was watching up on the mountain, says they worshiped Yahweh. They realized he's the one true God. That God did the miracle and they praise him and they say the Lord is the Lord of all, but that is not the end of the story. The end of the story comes a few verses later. The prophet goes back and he starts to pray for the nation. He stepped forward and prayed in a sacrifice and he goes back and starts to pray. And then I love this. Verse 45, last verse we're going to read today is this. It says, meanwhile. Man, I love that word. I could preach for an hour on that word. Because here's the point. Here's the imagery that I hope you see. That meanwhile, meaning while they were doing the sacrifice, God is over here taking care of some stuff behind the scenes. While they're wrestling with whether to trust God and whether to choose God and whether to do the whole thing, while they're kind of walking through this and Elijah is trying to make this whole thing, God is working all things out for our good over here. And too often, all we can do is live by sight, but what God calls us to do is live by faith. Because meanwhile, behind the scenes right now, God is working things out. That you're walking through a season, you're walking through some pain, you're walking through some famines, but meanwhile, God is behind the scenes working things out for you. And if you can step into that, I don't know what the sacrifice looks like. I don't know what it is. It could be a relationship to walk away from. It could be a financial gift. It could be to start something that God wants you to do something. It could be to sacrifice your time. I have no clue. What you can trust is that meanwhile, behind the scenes, as you're struggling with steps of faith, God is back there going, I've got you. Meanwhile, the sky grew black with clouds, the wind rose, and heavy rain started falling, and Ahab rode off to Jezreel. Elisha had them dump 12 buckets of water onto a sacrifice. And God's response is to bring bucket after 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 bucket of water. A heavy rain came. What I want you to see is this, and I'm telling you, if you can get this, it was the sacrifice that brought the surplus. And I don't mean that, hear my heart in this. I do not mean that if you just write a big check, God's going to write a big check back to you. I do not believe that at all. Matter of fact, sometimes if you write a big check, it gets worse, okay? Just so we're clear, okay? This is not prosperity. This is not name it and claim it. That's not it at all. What I'm saying is there are more things than just financial blessing at stake. There is spiritual blessing, relational blessing, emotional blessing. There are so many things, and I believe with all of my heart, while it's not a one-to-one finance, when we step in faith, whatever it is, financial, relational, spiritual, emotional, whatever that is, God's blessing, God's surplus comes in a mighty way that we could never see. And he unloads buckets upon buckets upon buckets of peace, of joy, of freedom, of hope, of life. And that is what we're called to walk with. That is what they call the fruits of the Spirit. Those are promised. And those come in the surplus that comes from the sacrifice. So the question is this today, whether you've been here for one day or several weeks and several years, what is God is asking you to choose to sacrifice? It's your choice. You don't have to. You don't have to participate. You don't have to do anything. It is between you and God. I hate guilt. I hate the whole thing. I hate the prosperity gospel, stuff like that. That's why I kind of go against it so much. But here's the deal. I know there's way more at stake than you realize. There's way more at stake than I realize. Again, I've been wrestling with something for the past couple of weeks. It just kind of hit me last night, like, that's it. And the moment I realized, I was like, oh, done. We're like, good. I got it. My hope and prayer is that you would step into it. That you would be willing, whatever it is. You'd be willing to step into sacrifice, trusting on the other end of your sacrifice is God's surplus. Whatever you're lacking. I want to put a verse back up. We start to wrap it up. At the time of sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed. So here's what we're going to do. I'm done preaching. I'm done walking through this. Here's what I want. We got an experience for you. If you're watching online, you can email us. You can kind of participate a little bit, and we'll figure that out with you. But in your seat, you should have this tag. It's blank. It's blank for a reason. It's blank because I want you to be able to write into it. I want you to be able to kind of write what God is calling you to do, what promise he's calling you to step into, whatever that is. And it could be towards something or away from something. It could be freedom from an addiction and a struggle and a habit that you need to write down, and maybe you don't want to write it down. You're just going to put an X because you know what it means. I want you to write it down. Or it could be a promise that you're trusting. It could be something that you're going to hold on to. You're going to sit back and go, no, this is what I believe God's called me to step into this. I believe God's going to bless me with this, and I want you to write that in there. And if you're here with somebody, I want you to pray with them. We're going to reverse it. We want you to pray with them over this whole key tag thing, and then I want you to do something. I'm going to ask you when I get done praying, I'm going to ask you to come forward. Because I talked about the chain, and I talked about being hinged and stuck to something. But you have a choice. And so as you come forward and you bring your year-end offering, whatever that is, and you come forward with your key tag, here's what I want you to do. I want you to pick up an end to one of these, and I want you to unhinge it. Symbolically stating, I'm done. I'm no longer stuck by that. I made a choice to get myself addicted. I made a choice to get myself mentally attached to that person. I made a choice that got me chained, but I have a choice to unchain myself, and today is the day. I'm done. And I want you to unhook yourself, and then I want you to hook it onto the promise or the hope or the thing that you're walking on, whatever it is God's convicting you about. And I want you to take this back to your seat, and I want you to hold on to it. Remind yourself of why you did this. As I said a few weeks ago, it's easy to forget our why. It's easy to miss that. And so in a few moments, we're going to do that. But to do that, let me tell you the tension. Let me tell you the problem. You're going to have to choose. Because the quote, most of us have chosen heaven over hell. Not many of us have chosen heaven over earth. And so what this looks like practically, maybe where some of you are at is, man, you're a new Christian and you're here and you're like, man, I got it, man, I'm doing good. But at some point, if you've been a Christian, God says, hey, listen, I want you to take a step with me. Maybe it's serve or give or do something. Maybe it's be in a small group, or I don't know what it is. Spend time with him, read the Bible more, go to camp. I have no clue. But you're like, oh, you took a step with God and your relationship got better, but well, you still got your foot in the world. You know what? You still got some stuff. And you justify it, and no one's perfect, and you've got it. It's okay, and it's not bad, but man, you're doing good with God, and then God asks you to do something else. And the point is this. At some point, that's as high as I'm going. At some point, you can only go so high. At some point, God's going to call you to take another step, to go even further, to be all in. And I'm telling you right now, I can't do the split. So this is it right here, okay? We're done. My genes will not let me, all right? And the only way for me to go up higher The only way for me to go in that relationship, to feel the presence of God again, to kind of see what he wants me to see, is actually to let go of my hold on this earth and to lean completely into God. To sit back and keep going up and to understand that this new height, this new depth can only be achieved when I let go. That's what this moment's about. I don't know what God's asking you to let go of. I don't know what he's asking you to give. I don't know what's at stake. Maybe you've not even thought about it. Maybe right now God's convicting you about something. It's a hobby or a habit. It's a relationship. Maybe it's an amount. Maybe you wrote a check and it's like, God's like, I want you to give more. I want you to do something. Maybe you came and you didn't have any amount. You're like, I'm not giving anything. And again, God's convicting you. Here is the beauty of this moment. You get to choose. It's your choice because no one knows. No one has a clue what God's convicting you about. You get to choose exactly how in with God you want to be. Are you all in? Are you choosing heaven over earth? Are you going to lean totally into him and his security? Or are you going to come back down a little bit and be like, oh, God, I was with you until then. Like, I need my security over here, though, too. If I give that, if I do that, if I let go of that relationship, I'm going to stay right here. I feel comfortable right here. And my prayer is that you would not stay here, whatever that is, in the next few moments. You'd write on there what's holding you back or what you're walking into, either one. When I get done praying, at your time, at your leisure, I'm going to ask you to step forward. We got stations here, there, back there. We got pens up here you can write on. We got the chains all around. Don't everybody come to the front, okay? Go around. But I'm going to ask you to step forward and pray. Because we built this church to make it easy for everyone to find and follow Jesus, because I know for a fact that when you find him and then you follow him, when you can lean completely into this, it changes everything. And this is where you find the surplus of joy, of peace, of hope, of life, of grace, the life that we wanted. So, I'm going to pray. When I say amen, Chris is going to lead us in a song. And at your leisure, we've had people come up at different times throughout the whole song at any moment. Whenever you're ready, whenever you get clarity on whatever that is, I want you to fill out this card thing if you can. Bring this envelope forward with whatever you're bringing for the year-end offering. Put it in the basket. There's pens there. You can write. And then unhinge yourself. Have a moment for you to declare for you, I'm done being stuck to that mindset. I'm done being stuck to that person. I'm done being stuck to that way of living and that way of thinking. I choose life. I choose hope. I choose Jesus. Let's pray. God, thank you for this day. Thank you for free will, that we get to choose. Pray that we'd let go of the world. We'd let go of that chain, that thing that's holding us back. Pray the next few moments, God, that you would work in our hearts and our minds. You would convict and call us into something deeper, something more, something better. And help us have the courage and strength of Elisha to come forward, to step forward, to pray and declare, you are the Lord, the God of everything. We love you and thank you, Jesus. Amen.